This episode of Jonjo Lyons Reviews is sponsored by Legion M.
What's that like to live deliciously? Chaos reigns.
Please don't scream.
I said, don't you blame the movies. Movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos more creative.
What's going on? My name is Jonjo Lyons, and today I'm here to present to you my review for the last horror movie. Written by James Handel and directed by Julian Richards, the last horror movie stars Kevin Halworth, Mark Stevenson, and a bunch of other British people. A serial killer uses a horror video rental to lure his next victim. What begins as a teen slasher transforms into a disturbing journey through the mind of Max Parrott, a mild-mannered wedding photographer with a taste for human flesh. The human flesh thing's a bit of a spoiler, innit? Now, this is a movie that I haven't seen in a very, very long time. The first time this movie crossed my path was back in the early 2000s when I got my mum to rent it for me from Streatham Hills Blockbuster Video. Lots of good time spent in that video store. R.I.P. I really can't remember the reason that I picked it up at the time. Probably because it just said horror movie in the title. But in the years since, it stayed with me with the face of the film Psychopath forever burned into my mind's eye. Having already seen the Blair Witch Project at the time, this wasn't my first foray into the world of found footage horror. But it was absolutely my first experience of this type of narrative told in this way from this perspective. One of the things that I absolutely adore about this film is the faux documentary style, as we follow the serial killer Max on his days and nights while he's being filmed by his assistant. The only thing that I wish is that I'd been able to see it on VHS rather than DVD, but we'll get to that in a second. It's also interesting that years later I find myself now much more experienced with films of this nature. In rewatching the film, I couldn't help but compare it to another found footage serial killer movie, August Underground. Not only did I find myself comparing them in terms of brutality, but also national identity and the way that the filmmakers represent where they're from, and especially the types of horror that come from those countries. Let's just crack on. The film begins outside a diner in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Sure. I mean, apart from the fire extinguisher and a sign above it, both in European colours and standards, the notice to staff about the waste bins, and the British health and safety notice on the wall. But yeah, America. Thanks, IMDb. Cut inside the diner where we meet Waitress as she gets ready to close up for the evening. She takes a call from a young son, Michael. Hey, hope he hasn't got a sister, hey?
Okay. Bye.
And then continues to close doors and turn off lights. Her phone rings again, but when Waitress answers, she only hears somebody making kissing noises. The line goes dead, and then Waitress hears something get knocked over in the diner. She goes to investigate, finding a skull mask on the floor, which she picks up, revealing the killer behind her. The killer grabs Waitress when static suddenly fills the screen and we're met by Max.
Hello.
And this is the reason why I wish I'd seen this on VHS first. Max explains that he recorded over the movie, but assures us we weren't missing much.
The characterization was two-dimensional and, well, the dialogue was frankly embarrassing.
You know, alright, someone went to film school. Cut to Max beating a man to death in a public toilet, then back to the original shot. Max tries to get us to admit to ourselves that we're interested. After all, we did rent the movie with the intention of watching horror. And this is the first taste of what the last horror movie has to offer in terms of meta-commentary regarding our innate fascination with horror, violence, and true crime. Cut to Max paying a parking meter as he begins to tell us the story of his first murder. You see, one night Max was walking across Hammersmith Bridge when a man in front of him suddenly jumped into the water. Max jumped in after him and saved his life, with the two developing a friendship neither wanted, born out of necessity for the man to be grateful and for Max to make sure he's okay. That all then came to an end when the man took Max to a roof of a high-rise to share insights on life and whatever else. Max, sick of the man and regretting ever saving him, decided in that moment to put them both out of their collective misery.
So I walked right up to him and pushed him over.
Max explains that everyone thought it was suicide and that's how he got started. Cut to Max taking out a traffic warden. Or meter maid in America. Though that term doesn't really sound very progressive. For the purposes of this video, let's just call him Then to Max driving. He advises he usually kills about 8 people a year, after going kill crazy in the first year and taking out about 20. Nice. We then cut to a wedding and discover Max's day job as a videographer. He goes on to explain all the plus points of the occupation when he's berated by the father of the bride for not doing his job. Cut to Max as he preps us to see the first murder he ever filmed. Cut to a kitchen as Max introduces the rather moody looking Tim.
This is Tim. Say hello, Tim.
Max explains that Tim's a manager at a high street shop and was getting on quite nicely. Max then draws for the meat tenderizer when suddenly Tim perks up, kicking the camera over and screaming as he's beaten to death.
It's not your lucky day, is it?
Don't try and develop a personality now, Tim. Cut back to Max as he assumes that we don't approve and muses on what kind of judgment we may be passing on him. He especially finds funny the notion that we might think that he watched too many violent films as a child.
No, take it from someone who knows. It ain't the movies.
I agree. My mum let me watch whatever the f I want when I was a kid, and I turned out fine. I guess you could take this as the filmmaker's opinion on violent cinema and its effect on society in general. Cut to a pub as Max buys a drink. A drunk patron asks if he's making a film and Max says he is, asking the man for an interview. Outside they talk, with Max assessing from the man's midday intoxication and financial situation that life didn't quite work out for him. Triggered, Max then suddenly pulls a comically large gun and points it at the now scared man's head, asking why he still wants to live.
Why cling on to something that makes you miserable?
Hey, I'm right f***ing here, you know. Hard cut back to Max as he's having a shave. He assures us he didn't kill the man, actually feeling sorry for him. He says he just wanted to ask that question and then goes on to compare people like the man with people in bad relationships. Cut to a school as parents pick up their kids. We watch as Max approaches a boy on his own. Max says the boy's mummy has sent him to pick the boy up and so they both leave together. Cut to Max outside a door which is answered by Sam, his older sister and mother of the boy. Cut to the kitchen as Sam asks Max when he's going to get a real job. They discuss their lives with Max doing whatever he wants, having the ultimate freedom of killing without the restraints of a conscience, and Sam being the typical stay-at-home mum, almost rejecting every freedom that Max takes for granted. Also, it's interesting to see how much Max gets along with the kids, showing his immaturity and refusal to grow up in opposition of his sister's acceptance of an adult life. Cut to a dining room as Max hides behind a door. A woman enters who he promptly cracks over the head with a frying pan, leading onto a montage of violence, ending with Max preparing wood pigeon. Quick little extra note here. I really like how when the woman enters the room, she looks and actually sees the assistant. We get a brief little who the f are you look before she gets clonked. And yeah, I appreciate that. Max explains how he prepares the meat before serving the meal to a female friend. The friend asks what he plans to do with this film that he's making, but he just says it's a personal project. She leaves and Max tells us that they had a thing once, but now they're just friends. He explains it's a good thing, but I'm not entirely convinced.
We actually had a bit of a thing with each other a few years ago, but now we're just mates.
But like any good sociopath, he's lied to himself to the point of where it's his reality. It's kind of our superpower. He tells the assistant well done before we cut to a parking lot as a woman walks to her car. She gets in and Max pops up from the back seat and strangles her to death. Let's not worry about how he got in the back seat, yeah? With the woman dead, Max demands help from the cameraman in getting the body into the trunk, and this is the first time that we actually see him. They dump the body, shut the trunk, and Max wonders how long it will take him to find this one. Cut to Max in the car. He talks about his methods of killing and how he often switches up his MO in an effort to keep the authorities from linking up his crimes. Because of this tactic, none of his 50+ murders have been connected. Good stuff. Good stuff. Cut to another wedding. They film the reception with everyone involved being exactly the type of house that you'd expect at a British wedding before cutting to Max at the gym. He once again muses on the purpose of his film as he works out, then asks the assistant when he plans to commit a murder, stressing the importance of his participation. During this exchange, you see the camera back up slightly with the operator being intimidated, and I think that's just a lovely touch. Cut to Max entering the home of an elderly woman and being served tea. The woman asks if the tea's alright and Max responds,
Oh, it's fine, thank you, Grandma.
Okay, movie, that's the second time you faked me out on a murder, and both were pretty good. That's enough now, yeah? They talk about Max for a bit, not really being able to stick to anything and being a bit of a nomad, with the grandma then saying that his father was exactly the same. Max then asks if she thinks it's a family trait, to which she responds,
Didn't come from my side of the family, that's for sure.
Is it just me, or are they talking about doing murders? I like to think that Grandma knows exactly what Max is up to, and his father and his father's father were exactly the same. Cut to another random house. A woman enters and Max creeps down the stairs towards her. He then stabs the woman multiple times, and as she lay dying, Max tries to explain his film to her.
We're trying to make an intelligent movie about murder while actually doing the murders.
She dies before Max can finish, and we cut to the car as he asks us how much a human life is worth in comparison to doing something that no one else has done before. Cut to a dinner party. They discuss what it would be like if you knew what people honestly thought of you, with Max saying that it would only be bad if you couldn't see yourself for what you really are. The other man then tells him that he thinks he's an artist, but really he's just a that shoots wedding videos. This doesn't bother Max, leading to this.
I just want to say to members of the public that whoever did this is still out there. It must be...
This man is the husband of the woman that Max killed in the kitchen. He tells us he doesn't care about this man or any of the other people affected by the murder. And if he doesn't care about it, why should he think it's wrong?
And if I don't think it's wrong, why shouldn't I do it?
Cut to a pair of victims tied to chairs as Max enters the frame. Max tells the assistant to film the man as we watch his face as the woman is murdered. Then the woman is filmed as the man is murdered. I love this as it plays with the viewer in a really original way, and also raises an interesting point regarding the expectation of a horror audience. Regardless of whether the footage is real or not, you find yourself almost craning your head trying to see what's happening just outside the frame. The reactions of the man and the lack of reaction from the dead woman are also brilliant devices that create completely different yet equally horrifying feelings within the viewer. Watching what you can expect to happen to yourself and then seeing the aftermath. Seeing what you will become when Max is finished with you. We see quick cuts of the violence from other angles, and then Max asks us if we wanted to see it or not.
Now, did you want to see that or not? And if not, then why are you still watching?
Cut to Max watching old home movies. He watches in silence as we cut to the kitchen. Sam explains that Max is always getting that film out, but never comes with her to the cemetery, the parents having died 15 years previous. This clearly is affecting Max and lends further credence to the idea that Max's father was so much more important to him than the film ever directly addresses. Cut to an awkward dinner with Sam, the kids, their father and Max. Max eats his food like a gecko with the kid following suit. And while in the movie the dad is presented to be the fuddy-duddy boring type, I can't help but agree. Eat your f***ing food like a normal person, Max. If you ate food like that in front of my mum, she would have grabbed you by the throat and through gritted teeth whispered that if you didn't stop, she'd break your f***ing neck before returning back to her third bottle of Bacardi for the day. Hi, Mum! Cut to Sam and the dad discussing Max, with the dad calling him a bad influence on the kids. Cut to the car as Max talks about Sam and the husband, and then to another wedding. The best man does a cringe speech, and then we cut to the groom cheating on his new wife. He spots someone in the bushes, and then we listen as he kicks the shit out of Max. Cut to Max at home. He shows us a newspaper clipping about the groom having been murdered, and then shows us what happened. Cut to Max pouring gasoline on the groom and setting him ablaze.
Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy.
He then tells us the best thing about being a psychopath.
You don't have to take any from people.
Cut to a park as the dinner party people hang out. The women talk to the assistant about what he does for Max. They ask what the film is about, but are interrupted by the men when they return from playing football. We then hear Max talking about how he could kill them all now, but won't, and then discusses the dangers of just thinking about it and indulging in the fantasy. Cut to the assistant strangling Petra, who, after dying, pops her head back up and it's revealed that she's rehearsing for a play. Cut to Max interviewing the assistant about why he should consider him for promotion. The plan is for the assistant to start killing, which he says won't be a problem while clearly terrified. Cut to the two men in the park looking for a victim. I love this scene for the choreography, with the actors' entrances and exits from frame all timed perfectly and dependent on camera position. It's just nailed perfectly and I love it. The camera lingers on the last woman to pass them as we hard cut to her tied to a chair as the assistant prepares to beat her to death. He hits her with a chair leg and Max starts to grow frustrated at his technique.
No.
First showing him how hard to hit and then suggesting that he slash her throat instead. That's when the assistant finally realizes.
I can't do it. I thought I could, but I can't.
Max then steps in, takes the blade and gets the job done.
How hard was that?
Cut to Max badgering the assistant to explain why he couldn't do it, asking him what changed. He says it wasn't real when he was filming, and this is interesting as the statement can be seen as making the assistant a horror fan who, while able to watch awful acts perpetrated by even worse people in a movie, once the screen or partition is taken away and he is confronted with the reality of murder, it's a completely different story. The assistant then pulls a knife on Max, saying he's gonna stop him. Max says that if he does that, he'll be no better than him. The assistant then puts the knife down and we cut to Max preparing to cut his body up in the bath. He explains that he only picks people that have no family or friends, just in case they have a difference of opinion. Cut to Max serving mystery meat to Grandma, Sam, her husband and the boy, which they clearly enjoy.
How's yours, Grandma?
Very tasty.
The kid asks Max to be a gecko, but he declines, saying,
Well, sometimes we have to behave the way other people think we should.
Cut to Max explaining the best way to get rid of a body, then to another wedding, then back to Max saying it's all a joke, then to Petra acting in the after party. Petra thanks him for helping her rehearse and then asks where the assistant is. Cut back to Max as he wonders what we would say if we were face to face. Cut to Max chasing down the man he held a gun to earlier and offering him a job. Cut to a shot of a man sitting in his living room watching the film that we've been watching. Max knocks on the door and is let inside by the shocked man. Cut to the man now tied up as Max tells him it's not a joke, then asks why he watched the film all the way to the end. He tells him it's real when those people actually died. Now, is there something wrong with the man? Cut to Max considering why this is called the last horror movie.
As you'll be aware, I recorded this over a film called The Last Horror Movie. So, in a sense, it's the title of this movie.
We see footage of the man being killed, footage of him renting the video, and Max following him. We find out that this is the only copy of the film, and Max is killing whoever sees it, meaning that we will be his next victim. The film then ends with Max wondering where we are now, whether he's looking at us, whether he's gonna break in, whether or not he's already broken in. He then ends everything by telling us,
This is going to be your last horror movie.
the end! Yes! I love it. The Last Horror Movie is a fantastic postmodern twist on the slasher movie that I just adore. It's a found footage movie following the killer in the same vein as August Underground, but unlike August Underground, we're actually given insight into the killer, his motivations, his relationships with others, and his methods of evading capture, all of which is ignored in August Underground. That's not to say that this is any better than that series. August Underground isn't about anything other than the brutality which it shoves in your face as much as possible in order to invoke a visceral reaction within its audience. The Last Horror Movie, while telling a story of a similar person committing similar crimes, chooses to dial back the gore in favour of character development and subtlety, creating an altogether different beast. Max is essentially a horror director questioning us as to why we watch films of this nature, leading us to question ourselves. The only problem being that all of this is real and will soon become part of the film. The performances from the entire cast are also wonderfully natural and realistic, and the whole thing mostly just comes off as a home movie of sorts. Most importantly, none of it felt improvised. Man, that last scene in the original August Underground with those two sex workers. Me. Hated that scene. I still think about it. That's, oh my god. Oh my god. If you've seen August Underground and want something similar, I highly recommend you give this one a shot. And no one gets their cut off. So that was my review of The Last Horror Movie. Have you seen it? If you have, let me know in the comments below what you thought. And also let me know if you have any further insights into the character of Max that I may have missed or glossed over. Give the video a like, subscribe, and send it to somebody you hate. Thank you for watching. My name's Jonjo Lyons. Stay frosty.